Good evening, Dumelang, Salbonani, Mbotenabiso. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this Society Talks webinar series that has been initiated by the Southern African Trusts with the co-facilitation of the Graça Machel Trust, the Center on African Philanthropy and Social Development, Social Investment, CAPSI, and the Mandela Institute for Development Studies. My name is Karin Seke. I am the acting program director at Minds, and I will be the moderator for this evening. Thank you for joining us. And as I was saying, this webinar series, today we are sitting at episode 19, where we will speak about youth in agriculture, following our theme of food security. And we want to understand how COVID-19 had impacted our agripreneur, the small scale farmer, and with the voice of two young ladies that are with me on the panel, we'll share the lesson that young people have drawn from COVID-19, but also what were the challenges and how we can improve the situation. We hope that with you on the audience, the question, your comment, we will have a very rich conversation that can help the young people on the continent, especially on the southern region, to improve the situation and to make the best out of the pandemic that is affecting the entire continent. Without further delay, I will ask to my panelists to introduce themselves. Ekemeni, Udo.
Okay. Good afternoon from wherever you are. Thank you for having me. I am Ekemini Udo, a graduate of Agricultural Economics and Extension, and I'm also a scholar on the Minds program. I'm currently also pursuing a master's degree in agribusiness management. So I like to think that I'm passionate about tropical agriculture, and my transformative purpose is to double the number of women that pose as agripreneurs. So that will be it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ekemini. And please feel comfortable. Can you please also maybe raise your voice a little bit to allow our audience to just have a nice hearing of what you are saying. Lily Musaya, can you please introduce yourself and which organization you represent and why are you working in that field of work?
Hello, everyone. My name is Lily Musaya, and I am from Malawi. I have a company called Angelstone, and we basically develop and implement inclusive agribusiness models. But my company is also a member of the African Women in Agribusiness, which is a network under the Graça Machel Trust. And I have also served as CEO at African Women in Agribusiness for the past 2 years. Not the past 2 years, but for 2 years until 2018, when I decided to venture into my own business in agribusiness, really. And what we do is we come up with different business models that we can partner with disadvantaged groups in rural areas so that they can be able to find opportunities to make money as well. So that is basically the model that we use. And I decided to go that way because I see it as more sustainable way of development. Because then, I mean, if you teach somebody how to fish rather than give them fish, you know, they always say. So I think that especially smallholder farmers, they've been doing subsistence farming and not gaining much from it. So I've basically tried to find ways whereby they can do their farming, but more profitably. Yeah.
Thank you, Lily. And then let's just dive into the subject. Ekemeni, can you please tell us in your own perspective and what you have noticed the impact on COVID-19 on young agripreneurs in the Southern African region?
Okay, I hope you can hear me now. Am I audible enough?
A little bit louder.
Okay, I'll try my best.
That's much better. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me start by saying, as part of the sustainable goals for agriculture, we have one of it as zero hunger, right? And in the past years, we've been trying to see how to achieve sustainability in the agricultural sector, all right? And then when we talk about food security as one of the ways in which we can accomplish sustainability, we find three words very key when it comes to food security, which has been the availability, accessibility, and then affordability of food as well. We look at the youth population or the youth demographic as important because the youth we have the size, and we have the strength, and also we have the know-how, although to an extent not sufficiently as practitioners or so, but the youth has been the youth demographic has been a very important contributor to the fostering of the goal of the Sustainable Development Goal. So since the COVID-19 pandemic, there had been several health restrictions and several measures put in place in order to, first of all, check that people are safe. But then this has also impacted on several sectors of the economy. So when we look at the agricultural sector, for instance, I think one of the first things most of the government tried to do was to close the borders, okay? And ever since that had happened, we see that there has been a disruption of cross-border trade, where certain goods can't access the market they would normally have when things were normal, and then it becomes difficult to put their product out in the market. And sometimes it might even be difficult accessing the inputs which they use to produce what they produce. And then also we see that the dollar exchange rate had also increased for some time. It kept vacillating. That had also impacted upon the price of the input. That's also impacted on the value for product in the market. I mean, so this has been one of the things that one of the impact of COVID-19 on the agricultural sector. So we see that when the products that are being produced are finding it difficult to be on the market, then we can see that the returns to the farmer would be minimal, meager. And so it's a discouragement on their part. And then at the same time, they can't obtain the life they want to. They are not sustainable in their living, right? So that has been one of the impacts we have seen the COVID-19 do to the agricultural sector. The second has been that it has disrupted the food supply chain. Okay, so I had mentioned that somewhat in the first point when I talked about the cross-border trade being hampered and being disrupted. So this time around, when we look at the food supply chain, we look at what happens during the procurement stage of input, and then in between that to production and processing and marketing until it gets to the final consumer. So we see that because there has been a restriction on travel and movement of people, sometimes it's difficult for this product to go safely from where they are produced to where they're consumed. And before we even look at the production, I talked earlier about the input production, the input procurement sector, where it's difficult to access this inputs, the seeds, the chemicals, and the rest of it that are used to support production. Okay, and then the price increase. I mean, if what I'm doing is not sustainable enough, then how would I be able to expand? You know, how would I be able to venture deeper or get the profit that I want to get, right? So these are the challenges that the COVID-19 has brought, you know, to the youths in agriculture. Thirdly, let me also make mention of the fact that the movement of goods across the market and the rest of it has also been disrupted. We find that there are restrictions, there are certain passes that need to be obtained before certain, because initially before agriculture was named as an essential service, movements were not really flowing like they should or like they were before, until it was now enlisted as one of the essentials, one of the essential service in category of goods. And then the borders were at least relaxed a little bit for the flow of agricultural products. So this had also impacted on how much how profitable the venture would appear to the youth, those who are also into the business full time. So I think this has been what the three things I can say has impacted the youth in the agricultural sector since the COVID-19 pandemic situation.
Thank you, Ekemini. Lily, from your ends, do you have something that to add on top of what Ekemini said about the impact on youth, the agripreneur, what the pandemic has brought to the challenges that they're already facing, because we are aware that we are scarce of some resources such as water, agriculture, land. Now we have another challenges that the youth have to face as brought by the pandemic. So what are your views about the challenges?
I think that she has pretty much covered most of the challenges, but I'm just going to maybe speak from my experience as a business person and some of the things I have faced in regards to what she has said. And so firstly, I think I'll talk about it from the issue of loss of jobs. The few youths that are in the agriculture sector, some of them have lost their jobs, and it's not even really at the professional ones. It's also the ones that are in casual labor in rural areas, for instance. I'll give you an example of how I am in the seed industry, and we grow legumes. We produce legume seeds. And every year I get about maybe 70 to 100 casual laborers to do the grading of the seed. But then this year, because of the COVID, I couldn't bring such a number of people together, because most of the people that come are youth, especially women as well. And they actually depend on this to make money. But this year I had to outsource to a bigger company and use machines. So I think that the youth have lost on such job opportunities. And then also looking at other companies that have had to scale down, especially the processing ones, laying off some people. And then also, if you look at it on the education point of view, those that were supposed to graduate, from the agricultural universities have been delayed, and they're going to have to wait until next year before they get into industry and things like that. So issues of employment have been disrupted for sure. And when it comes to imports and the borders, like Ekemini said, that we have faced disruption through the borders closing. And also from a personal experience, one of the companies that I do business with is very much into the export industry. So basically I supply to them and they export. This year they couldn't buy because they couldn't be able to take their exports out. So I lost out on that business opportunity. Everything was set. They had even drafted the contracts and everything. But in the end, we couldn't get through with the business deal because for one, which is also another point I was going to I was going to bring out on the finance angle. Their bank had backed out at the last minute because they weren't very sure about the risk of extending credit to them during the pandemic. So because they didn't have finance, then they couldn't buy from us, then they couldn't export. And then issues also of having to stay at the border for 2 weeks before they can be let out, in quarantine and things like that. They canceled the whole business deal, and it was a lot of metric tons. I think it was a deal for 5,000 metric tons soybean, which was canceled. So I think those kind of things. So not only did the closing the border negatively affect markets, but then also supply chains, like my colleague mentioned earlier. I have a colleague who was going to get into irrigation this year, and they had already planned out everything when we started facing the closures and things like that. And they had planned to use solar irrigation equipment, but the company that was supposed to supply to him ended up, they ran out of stock and they couldn't get more stock in. So that disrupted his business entirely. And in the end, he opted to use petrol irrigation equipment, which is a lot more expensive. And he's looking at losses right now. So, closing the borders has really affected markets, like access to markets, but then also supply chains. And I think that when it comes to issues of markets, people that are in the agribusiness sector that deals with perishable goods suffered the most. And I think most youths are into these agricultural value chains, horticulture and things like that, because in those kind of businesses, you can make money every day. So, and also you don't really need big plots and a lot of like heavy financial input. So a lot of youths prefer to participate in these. But then because of COVID, you know, we had supermarkets closing down. We had the hospitality industry, you know, closing down, which are the biggest markets, you know, for fruits and vegetables and things like that. So in the end, I think most youth have been put out of business when it comes to that, because you know, all of a sudden hotels were not buying anymore, restaurants are not buying, and also schools, because schools had closed. You know, boarding schools who would usually buy food for their students, they have closed, and then those markets were also disrupted. And also, I think the last thing I was going to talk about was on finance. Yeah, a lot of financial institutions had pretty much stopped lending out during that period because businesses were suffering. And I tried to get finance myself, and they said they weren't giving out any money because then businesses were suffering and they were already facing defaults from other businesses. And so they couldn't take the risk of lending out more. So issues of access to finance, I think, yeah, have also been disrupted with the COVID.
Yes, thank you. As a business in the agri sector, you have seek some help from business or finance enterprise, but did you seek some help from your government? What kind of strategy they've put in place to come in help of the youth in the sector? Not if you can just tell us the strategy that you have received from your national government or from the region as a body. Did you notice any strategy that was specifically targeted for the youth or for the agriculture sector?
To be honest, I try to think of, there is none whatsoever that I am personally aware of. And also I think for Malawi, it's a challenge because we were also going through an election year. So change of government. So the time we were going through COVID, we were also changing governments. And so I think that initially the government they had started to put some measures into place, but then we had to go into elections. And so pretty much everything was put at a hold. And the new government, I think they haven't really come up with anything as of yet. But what I had noted was from not private sector, but NGOs, international ones. I think it's UNDP, one of them, who had put out a call for grants for COVID response for businesses, private sector. But the issue is that it wasn't specific for the youths or agribusiness. It was just for the private sector. And then I find that also with the call, it needed pretty much, you know, your company to be somewhat established. So you needed to have the systems in place, which a lot of youth in agriculture do not have. I think a lot of youth in agriculture are still doing their businesses informally. So such calls, you know, from UNDP or such organization definitely would not consider them. And so basically, you know, just to sum that up, I am not aware of any special support, and I haven't gotten any from the government in order to mitigate the effects of COVID. I have seen some from the NGOs, but I don't think it's very helpful for the youths, or especially those in agriculture, because it's pretty much selective in terms of who they're going to help and things like that. And I pretty much have had to adapt on my own. And one of the things I did was to divert some of our money into other businesses outside agriculture, small businesses. And it was a risk, considering you're going into a new business and you won't make money immediately. So we struggled, you know, in those other new businesses we were trying to put up, but I think it's the only survival kit I saw to diversify in other industries other than just wait in agriculture and face losses.
Okay, thank you. Ekemeni, if I may come back to you, I know you are from Nigeria, based in Uganda at the moment where you are studying. So from your perspective, where you are based, or from your government in Nigeria, I know that this talk is talking about the Southern African region, but can you please just have a voice of what had happened from your side? Any strategy that was put in place for young people in the agriculture space?
Okay, I think I heard of one about 3 months ago, thereabout. There was this organization who had come to, I forget their name right now, but they had come to establish a seed initiative where they get to subsidize the input to farmers who are struggling to be in the business, who can't seem to afford the prices of what they use, the seeds and the chemicals and the rest of them. That has been the only one I've heard of. Although I didn't follow up to know how effective that was and how it went through, if actually it came out as it was supposed to. So, but that has been the only one I'd heard of. I was just reading recently about, I think it's called the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, something like that, where they get to make loans accessible to farmers. But I don't know the extent of the scope of their coverage, if it had, if it's beyond the country where they are operating from. So I think those has been the only two I have learned of. But for I think that's about it I've learned of so far. You seem to be on mute.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for that. But I wanted to say that you haven't heard about a government that had a dedicated strategy for young people in agriculture, or just for people in agriculture.
Not that I've heard.
Okay. Okay, I just also wanted to come back to the audience that feel free to send your question, your comments on the chat section. The tech people will send it to us and we'll discuss about it. To come back to you, Lily and Ekemeni, young people, as you have mentioned, that there were no strategy in place from the government or our regional body. Did you, as young people, come together and try to find ways or way you could learn from each other, and also try to to act as a collaborative as young people, because you haven't received something from the government, but as a group of young people, did you come up with some strategy or solution on how you're supposed to move forward, to not, because you have highlighted that there were a lot of jobs that were lost, the food supply chain was disrupted, but just to find another ways just to go around those challenges that COVID-19 had brought up to your businesses or to your work, or to the agriculture space. Maybe the use of technology, how to use it to improve the challenges that you are facing. Lily,
Well,
yeah.
to be honest, I don't quite belong to any youth grouping in agriculture, and I don't think there are many of those. What I do belong to is some women groupings, in which case we haven't really, well, if I speak from the women's perspective, there are some things that we have done, but from the youth perspective, there is none. And I think that's one of the challenges when it comes to youth in agriculture. We're not very organized. So especially in my country, speaking at national level, we don't have a lot of vibrant youth groupings or organizations in agriculture. I have tried to participate in one, but in the end, I found that it got hijacked, by the adults who had actually championed putting us together. We found comments like, they got a coordinator who was somebody much older to coordinate our issues. And then apparently because we didn't have the experience, that kind of thing. So I have found that most of the programs that are there for the youth are really just for sure, if I may say, youth have never really been given the positions of power or been left to actually, manage these things. So So that's the thing. Everything I have done to manage the COVID situation, as far as my business is concerned, has been from my own initiatives and not really as a group to discuss. Of course, you know, we do have some informal groups on WhatsApp, but they're not really just for agriculture. They're for different kind of things where issues will come up. And then people will talk about some of the things that they're doing, and you do get some ideas from there.
Okay, thank you. Ekemeni, you are still a student, so you are still learning. Maybe some research has been done or young people coming together. What can you tell us from your side?
I think I agree pretty much with what Lily had said. The youth voice is not very much represented when it comes to policy making and talking about issues that affect them as a group. Okay, and then when she also talked about the informality of the sector, it might be really difficult to access some of these things when the means for, should I say, going formal in quotes, is quite expensive. So many would prefer to just remain informal practitioners. So these are the problems that we face. I'm speaking about one of the ways I think has been used as a means for getting out of the whole issue. Maybe I'd say that I've heard of a certain group who decided to form a kind of a cooperative, so to say, to form a cooperative where the voice of one person is being amplified. So they don't just go for a grant, for instance, as an individual, but then it's collective. But then at some point, I think if the voice of the cooperative is to be considered, then they have to be registered too. So that's another point where we are really lacking, getting registered as a cooperative, where they can be sure that your activities are legit, for instance, and are fostering of economic growth and the rest of it. So I think these are also the issues that we have. But then I think when youth come together, to make their voice or to air their concerns, to make it stronger, it might be better accepted than if it was just an individual speaking, or as one person. So that's what I would say.
So Lily, to come back to you as a woman in the business, do you make use of the social media that we have available, maybe just to also alert other young people in your sphere that you are running a business, maybe to be the one that will create the table for young people? Because what you have said, that they are not including young people into those strategy or app, but why not for the young people in the business to start the narrative and start a platform, let's say by Facebook, or you even mentioned WhatsApp group, where it was not all the young people being involved in agriculture, but agriculture touches all the aspect of life. So even your friends that are not in agriculture, they might in one way or another be the voice that will amplify yours in your challenges. So the use of social media to try to overcome the challenges that you are facing.
Right. So to be honest, I do use the social media, but not to mobilize the youth to get into agriculture. I haven't done a lot of that. What I have done a lot of on social media is using it for marketing. And so, for instance, when I'm trying to sell my commodities, most of my marketing is done on social media platforms, and that's where I have gotten most of my business actually. So there's some groups of agriculture, on Facebook that I will post. There's some groups on WhatsApp for agriculture, although not just for the youth, but just people in the agriculture, that I will post my products, and then I get some customers that way. But when it comes to mobilizing, although through that process, then you do get some youth approaching you to say, I would love to learn more. And I have a lot of that. I get a lot of that. I would love to, learn some more. Can we meet? And in that case, we do meet, and, we talk, and I try to help where I can. And sometimes they ask for references to say, for instance, I'm looking for this type of thing. Where do you think I can get it? And then I point them to the right people who can help them and things like that. So that's the kind of communication I have had on social media this far. but really not to mobilize youth and then form some kind of a grouping. That's not what I have done.
Thank you.
Although, I mean,
Yes.
I was going to say, although that is a valid point, I mean, if we need more youth groupings, maybe perhaps we should take the initiative and create them and create more of them, you know, if, you know, for us, by us. So I think that that's definitely something that we can do better as the youth get organized and form these groupings. Yeah.
Ekemeni, what can you say on that matter about the usage of social media, not only to to have a grouping of young people, but to learn from, because there were so many challenges that COVID have brought up. So to learn from each other, so to learn from the way you have solved a problem to help other people in your sphere. So for the young people, not only to make the better usage of what they master the most. And I think the young people are the one with the millennium coming. They are the one that understands this social media better than the previous generation. So why don't you make that use for a greater good as agriculture?
Okay, I think that the usage of social media is it's key in terms of amplifying our voice and what we do, making others know the experience we have, the challenges we encounter, and the rest of it. Let me just quickly cite an example. I had come across some group on Twitter, and it was a South African guy who I think is about the ages of 24 to 25. And what he does is fresh veggies using hydroponic system. And then I really found the platform educative in that he would literally take us through the process of what he does and how it gets to the market and the rest of it. But I think one of the things that comes with too is also social media bullying, because even right there on that page, I could see some people trying to bully him because of what he was wearing and then the rest of it. So somehow, although he was able to put his point through that is not supposed to be the emphasis. The emphasis is supposed to be on what I am putting out and not how I look like or the rest of it, because I think he had this uniform from the apartheid farmers in South Africa, something like that. So they were trying to body shame him on that. So social media comes with a lot of bullying too. But I think if we understand that the content we're putting out is for the betterment of people who might be interested in what we are doing, and also to enable people come to know more about what they want to venture into. There are sometimes I could even see an information about something I didn't even know before, and I'm like, oh wow, so this existed, and then I want to find out more. So I think it goes a long way, although it comes with its own cons. But yes, I think it's also a very powerful tool in putting our voice out there, letting people know what we do, and then the rest of it.
Thank you. I have a question from Shungu to Lily. Lily, can you please tell us what are some of the key learnings as a businesswoman in agriculture that you will share with other youth in the sector on building resilience for the businesses, especially in this challenging time?
I think that firstly, networking, you need to have a very broad base of people that you interact with within the industry. I think that can help. So not only do you learn a lot from them, because I think that if you have a network of people who have been in the business for a long time, and not just business people, but even technical people. For instance, on my end, I have to know some breeders because I am into seed. So the people like scientists, that I have to interact with, people in academics, for different studies that are coming up, new varieties and things like that. And people in the finance industry as well, people who are the buyers. So you just need to, I think, get out of your shell and get out there and create as much a big network as you can. That helps. For instance, when I started my business, it was because of a breeder that I met in the plane, and we sat next to each other. And then he said, so you work in the agricultural industry and you're teaching farmers these things, but you're not practicing them yourselves. So why don't you try seed multiplication? And then I'm like, I've never farmed before. And then he said, no, I can help you. I'll give you a manual. And in fact, I'm going to lend you your first seed, you know, your first basic seed. And then when you get money, you'll pay me. And that's how I got started. And with him, everything I wasn't sure about, you know, I would ask. And so I got the technical help. And so having a good network is not only going to, it helps with a lot when it comes to the finances, you know, for one, or sometimes when you don't have, if you have a good network, some people can extend, you know, services to you on credit based on trust, because you know each other and you're within that network and things like that. So I would say not only for the resources is why you should have a good network, but then also the technical know-how, and then the relationships. And especially during this period, it's something that has come in handy. I have sold some of my products at a loss, and I'm running at a loss right now, but then I have managed to access some inputs on credit through my network, because I do business with them all the time and they understand it's a difficult period. So they're willing to extend that, you know, and when things normalize, then they will get their finances and issues like that. And also when it comes to marketing, because markets as we know them this time around had been disrupted, but because I have some networks in as far as even not just in Malawi, but some people I have interacted with in Zambia, we were still able to come to an arrangement, and they still managed to get, you know, my products, even with the border issues that we had. But I think if you don't, and because you're able to discuss and then, you know, approach each other and agree. So I think that relationships are very key at this point in time, because where you're failing, other people can lift you up. And then also being open to the knowledge, you know, learning. Now we have had to adapt and change the way we're doing things. It's useful to know how other people are doing it and learn from that, or what is working, you know, so that you can be able to change and divert and, you know, adapt your strategies and things like that. So I think the networking and also being open to learning, I think that is very key if you're going to be a youth in agribusiness. And I think it's very important also because you're just beginning. So you need these relationships for them to show you the ropes, you know, to pull you up and show you some things in the industry, but you also need to do a lot of learning. So I think for me, key issues is the networking, creating relationships, and keeping your eyes out, you know, for learning opportunities and seeing what is out there.
Thank you. I wanted also just to add a follow-up question to this one. With the challenges that you have faced in your business, did you also try to change your market to find new people to buy from you? Because you have highlighted that the borders were closed, but did you try to find new people to get your products, but locally, let's say in Malawi?
Yeah, that's the thing. So domestic markets are very important right now. So initially, I have been selling for the past 2 years that I've been in business, I've been selling locally in Malawi, but I thought that it would be a better opportunity to break out of Malawi, because selling in Malawi comes with its own challenges. The biggest buyer when it comes to inputs for the past years has been government. And not that I was able to supply to government directly, but I would supply to other seed companies who are supplying to government. Then they would have to wait for government to pay them in order to pay me, which can take a year even. So which is why I was looking for markets outside of Malawi, because in that basically it's better payment terms, and then also maybe better prices. So it's what I was targeting for this particular year. And then COVID happened. But I still found a way, you know, to take my things out there. Although because of COVID, the price was much lower because the company I was selling to was also facing problems. But at that particular moment in time, the domestic market in Malawi was pretty much dead. So there wasn't much going on here. So I thought it's still better to take it out. I do have some products that I'm still trying to sell at the moment. And I think that before I have always focused on the seed companies, other seed companies. But what I have realized through social media is that because then when we sell to other seed companies, goes to government, which goes to smallholder farmers. So smallholder farmers get the seed, through government subsidy programs, for instance. But there is a group of farmers who are being left out. And I think they're the missing middle. They're those who go to work, but also farm. I think those ones, they have some information gaps. And also when it comes to accessing things. So by putting my issues or my products on social media, I got a lot of inquiries from that group of people, like sort of like middle scale farmers, those who are working. So I got to sell also quite a lot to that group. So what I decided was I was going to, because when we sell seed to smallholder farmers, the packaging is different. It's in small packs, like 1 kgs to make it more affordable for them. But if I have a medium scale farmer, there's no way I can be selling them 1 kg bags, because then it's going to take a lot of 1 kg bags in order to fulfill them. And sometimes they need some of them will do just 1 hectare or maybe half a hectare to 5 hectares probably. So I started to do bigger packaging to target such people. So package sizes that are like 40 kgs instead of 1 kg, and then the others at 60 kg, and then also target the places where those people are found to market my products to them. So I think that's the market niche I've been trying to break into lately.
Thank you so much. And then to both of you, one of the purpose of the Society Talks is to gather information and experiences to make submission and advocacy on strengthening food system. Seeing the gaps that the gaps that we have noticed in supporting youth in agriculture, what would you say that are the top 3 things that need to be put in place by the government, for example, for a better support for the youth in the sector of agriculture? Ekemeni, maybe you can start, and then Lily, you can top up if you have. The top three things that government can do to help youth in the agriculture sector.
Okay, first of all, I would say I would really advocate for an inclusion of the youths in policy formulation process, because in as much as it is important for the government to intervene, if the need of the youth is not being addressed, or if it's not being if it's not made known to them, it is easy to just assume that these are the problems, and then it might be deeper than that. But I feel if there is a youth figure represented in the process, then it will be easy to collate the general needs of the youth, for instance, in a sector or in a region, and then aid there in such a way that when the government are putting their policies and whatever they want to use as an instrument or a tool for intervening, they can capture this need specifically, to address the issues that the youths are facing. Okay, so I would really advocate for an inclusion of the youth in the policy formulation process. Okay, so secondly, just like Lily had talked about being adaptable to change, we see that the world we live in is very much not so easy to predict. For instance, the COVID pandemic came, without any foreclosure, without any news, and this is a society, this is the kind of system we find ourselves in. It's constantly changing, constantly evolving. Things come, things go without planning for. So I think it's also really important that with what we do, we try to be as open as possible, knowing that it's easy for, things could change at any point in time, and the need for adaptability comes in handy, where we have at the tip of our fingers alternative courses of action, things that we could do in case this and this and this happens. So I think that exposure to knowledge, just like Lily had said, exposure to knowledge, being able to be in a close relationship with those working in the breeding section, the researchers, to know what they are predicting, and how we as youth farmers could adapt to to those changes just in case they come. So I think that is also really important to cope with what we are facing. Thirdly, I think the government on their part might have been doing quite a lot to see how to empower the youth in the agricultural sector, either through their input or the rest of it. But I would really like to see some system of do I call it follow up? Do I call it kind of follow up in such a way that, assuming this help or these grants are being given, can there be a system where it is closely monitored to ensure that actually it comes out successful, and perhaps not just a list of grants and then, okay, I have done my part, you go do your part, because something could happen along the way and the intended purpose of that might not be accomplished, so to say. So I think if the government on their part become really interested, really inclusive into every process, maybe through agencies, through whatsoever means, whatever structure has been put in place, then I think it will go a long way to assist the youth and then enable them achieve the goals which they want to achieve for the agricultural sector. So I think that would be my top 3 for now.
Thank you. Lily, any top 3 that you think that the government should invest in?
I think that they need to be more deliberate, and more deliberate in their initiatives. What I mean by that is that I'm trying to find the best word for it, but okay, sometimes they come up with policies that are very broad, as long as they mentioned youth in it. It's like the fashion. So in some sense, you cannot write a document without putting 2 paragraphs on women and youth, but it doesn't really mean anything. So you will write, let's say, different sectors, that you're going to work in, focus on cotton, on soybean or whatever. And then they will come up with a paragraph of HIV and then one on women and youth. And that's it. So what I mean is that they need to be more deliberate in the programs that are really drawn for the youth, and policies to actually follow that up. To give an example, I think that I'm not quite sure if this is correct, but I think we've had situations where is it in COMESA or other regional bodies have said that governments must commit to giving 30% of contracts to women, for instance. And if that can be done for youths as well, that is being more deliberate and more inclusive for the youth, because it's not very easy for youth to compete and tender against businesses and make it. Because other businesses, definitely they have a better standing. They've got more financial muscle, they have better, track records and things like that. If you have to put me against all the big companies, for sure, I won't. But if you evaluate me based on the basis that it's a youth-owned business, and at least this is the bare minimum that a business must have, because you can't judge me the same way you judge a big company, I think that would be helpful. So I think if they can be more deliberate, because most of the business, let's face it, in Africa, or at least in my country, is done by business. So if youth can participate in these businesses, I think that's a start, because as we know, markets is what pulls everything. I mean, you can do business, but as long as you're not selling, that business is going to die. So what pulls the agriculture industry is the market. It's going to put, without markets, finance is not going to give you money. Banks are always going to ask you, where is your market? That's the key thing. So in order for you to produce, to go get money, you need the market. And the biggest market is government. I think if they can start from there to be more deliberate in allocating some of those markets to youth-owned enterprises, that would be helpful. I'll give you an example in the seed industry in Malawi. Before, we have a new system altogether now, but before, there is an organization called STAM where they would be given, only the members of STAM would be given the contract to supply seeds for the government subsidy program. And in order for you to be a member of STAM, there was a membership fee of like 2 million or so Malawi kwacha. I mean, how many youth-owned companies are going to come up with that money in the first place? And then they put up such conditions as you must have a warehouse, you know, you must do this and that. Automatically, just those conditions are going to leave out use entirely. And yet we're producing these things and we're even supplying them to those big seed companies that are sitting there in STAM. So I think if they can look at issues like those and come up with measures or, you know, deliberate measures to allow youth to access at least business and government, I think that would be helpful. That's issue number one. But I think they should also focus on finance. And I think in as far as Malawi government is concerned, when it comes to finance, I think they're trying, because I think they have come up with a window now, although it's not specifically for the youth, it's open to everyone, but I think they're trying to get the youth to access this. So I think finance is also important. They need to focus more on ensuring that the youth can access finance. And it's not just youth like me, but then also those in rural areas that are doing small things, you know. If those ones, if there can be ways for those, because even that financial window I'm talking about now by the Malawi government, it's still one that not every youth can access, you know, unless they come under someone. And yeah, so I think they need to pay more attention to finance, but then also access to productive inputs. And that's not inputs in terms of seeds only, but then also like when it comes to machinery, like tractors, affordable ones, because as you know, I mean, I farm and my mother has been helping me with this. But every time I go, I'm thinking there is no way I can be farming the way my parents have farmed, the way my grandparents have farmed. I need to bring technology into this, because at the moment it's still the hose, you know, because the tractors are too expensive and things like that. So I think we need to get with the program as far as technology is concerned. And that's for efficiency as well. You know, if we're going to be more productive and produce more, we need to make a lot of use of technology. So if they can make access to these technologies more easy and affordable, I think that a lot of youth, you know, can get into it. And also processing equipment. So it's not just about the farming, but then we can get on the end of processing, you know. So if we get access to those kind of machineries where we get to put up processing plants, you know, to process things, that is very much helpful. So access to those kind of things, you know, farm inputs, implement technologies, you know, things that are make them more accessible, but affordable as well. Because for one, I think there's a lack of knowledge. Most of us don't even really know what is there or what is available, and then or what is more affordable and issues like that. So I think if they can invest more in that area, that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. I wanted just to digress a bit. Ekemeni has to leave us, but before you go, Ekemeni, I just wanted, because we had received a comment from Tumiso that says that great insights, we really need more mentor to guide the youth entrepreneur. I wanted to find out from Ekemeni first before you leave us, and then Lily, what triggered you to go into agriculture? Because it looks like we don't have a lot of mentor for the young people to go in that direction. What did make you decide to go through the agriculture direction as a young person instead of looking for a more lucrative job, if I may put it that way? You are muted. You are muted. And also, please tell us maybe some example of young that you look up as a role model into the agriculture sector.
Okay, so for me, I'd say my drive has been the kind of economy I find myself in. So Nigeria, for instance, was predominantly an agrarian society in time past. And when I look at the history records, I see a lot that was done. The system was literally sustained by agriculture through export. Like then we were exporting groundnut, we were exporting so many of all those other cash produce. And then as time went on and oil wells were being discovered, then the economy shifted a little bit towards that area. And now in the news, we hear that it's not as sustainable as it used to be. Perhaps the oil wells are drying and the rest of it. And then these days, a lot of people are then seeing how to come back to agriculture, but then they don't want it to be what they have known. They don't want it to be the crude, traditional way they have known it to be. They want something profitable. They want something sustainable, something that can sustain their lifestyle, something that can be built to compete, with other sectors that we have, and then something that would bring in the returns that they desire. So for me, that has been my drive. One of the reasons why I had decided to delve into the agricultural sector, because I see it as a field that is constantly evolving, especially in my own country. I mean, there's a lot that is going into it. I mean, just recently I was out speaking with my supervisor, and he had talked about creating a platform where organic farming is being fronted, and then it's also something that they intend to put out there in such a way that most consumers can come to see, how that is good for their health, for instance, and then delve into it. So there is a lot that is going on in the agricultural sector now. So for me, that has been the reason why I had decided to stay, to delve into here and to stay here. I have quite, maybe I should just talk about two. Recently, I was working in a farm enterprise where that is being headed by one of my senior friends. So I think I look up to him as one of my mentors, in that he has been there for quite a number of years, almost 20 years now in the agricultural sector. And then he has been able to achieve some level of sustainability in terms of his markets and his sales, and how he's able to address certain needs we have. So I think for me, that's one of the mentors I look up to. Maybe I might not have a public figure as a mentor, but I think for me, looking up to those who are closest to me and learning from them is also key for me.
Okay, thank you so much, Ekemini, and thank you for availing yourself for this talk. We will excuse you and we will wrap up the conversation with Lily. Lily, I just wanted to ask you, in adapting to the COVID-19, what are the new opportunities have you identified that can benefit youth in agriculture?
I think that maybe technology. I think that what COVID-19 has shown us the most is the power of technology. And so as we know, I would like the youth not to look at agriculture as farming, but as a value chain where different people can participate at different levels. So I think that it's provided, all these problems we're facing brings an opportunity for, let's say, the tech people to come into the agriculture sector and offer solutions. So if they can, by developing apps or even certain machinery and things like that. So I think what it has shown, because I think when COVID came, technology is what has saved us, and we're able to have meetings still, things like Zoom all of a sudden came up and has become more useful. A lot of apps, shopping apps and things like that have become more useful. So I think likewise in the agriculture sector, an opportunity there, opportunity to address all the problems we're facing with technology, So I think those are the opportunities that have come. But then also now more than ever, we're going to need food. So even though already we're facing, some shortages, so that brings some opportunities to produce more and get the food out there. So there's definitely a need. And when it comes to inputs, even because that chain has been disrupted, all of a sudden, you know, governments or different groupings have found themselves having to make a lot of donations as far as inputs are concerned, you know, and things like that. So we're definitely at running at a shortage right now. It's an opportunity to produce more when it comes to the inputs themselves, but then also when it comes to growing the food itself. And I think also in distribution, I think there's an opportunity in distribution, because we have to find ways of bringing things to people, not people coming to get the things, seeing as, you know, social distance and things like that. So I think those are also some opportunities that are there generally.
Yes, I echo the sentiments of the need to produce more, because with the border being closed, most of the food that we are receiving from overseas were not coming into the country, which left a gap or an opportunity for the local farmer to sell the products in local markets. So that was also one great opportunity that COVID had brought up for our local markets. So can you please tell us, we are wrapping up this conversation, what strategies, mechanism to make the agriculture sector more attractive for the youth? Because we have asked the question of a lack or a shortage of mentor for the young people to look up to. COVID had brought in challenges, and some people have given up to the sector already. We don't have as young people as we wish to be in the sector. So what are the mechanisms that to make agriculture more appealing, but also for those young people out there that who are like losing faith in the sector? What can you tell them?
I think that for me, I would look at why people get into the different industries that they get into. I mean, if I look at doctors or lawyers, pilots, most kids want to get into those kind of fields. And I think the number one thing is that they pay well, you know, so those people are well paid. So I think youth look for opportunities where they will make some money, professions where they will make some money, but then they also look at something with prestige, you know, when you say I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, you know, it sounds good, you know, kind of thing. But I think you can have a profession that sounds good, but if it's not paying well, people are not going to do with it. So for me, when I analyze the situation, I think the issue is about profitability of an industry first, and then issues of being satisfied with other things becomes second. We've got difficult professions that people get into, you know, that pay well. For instance, sometimes, I don't know, engineers have to do difficult jobs. Sometimes they you know, they're very physical. They can be physical, but they're well paid, you know, so they will do them. And engineers, let's say civil engineering or whatever engineering is there, some of them are dirty jobs as well. You know, they will be dirty with their oils and things like that, but youth that still want to do them because they pay well and they have that prestige. So the way I see it in agriculture, the reason why agriculture has not been appealing to many youths is that it hasn't been paying well. It hasn't been profitable. You know, our parents have always told us, go to school so that you don't become a farmer. Why is that? Because farmers, you know, don't get a lot of money. It's a dirty job, but they don't get, you know, a lot of money as well. It's done for survival and things like that. So I think number one, to make it attractive is to make it profitable. I think that's what we can do first. If you make it profitable, it's definitely going to attract more people into the industry. Then we can worry about how comfortable people are in the industry after that. But I think the first thing is to make it profitable. And you know, if it works, you know, you see even more recent now with social media, you will see some farmer, you know, who has come up and they're making all this money, and now all of a sudden people want to try it, you know, to produce that as well. So, and I think in the past agriculture hasn't been profitable, but we have to make it, you know, more profitable, and then we're going to attract, you know, more youth into there. Let them know of the different fields. I think most youths look at agriculture as farming. You know, we haven't really broadened our minds to see how wide and diverse the sector is itself. Every time we talk about government supporting agriculture, I'll see comments from you saying, but we've been doing farming since hundreds of years and our economies haven't changed. And try to say agriculture is the whole value chain, it's not just about farming. And the more we understand that and we need and get into the different value chains, the more agriculture is going to become more profitable, not just for the youth, but for economies, as a whole. So I think that what's going to pull the sector right now is to make sure that it's a profitable industry, to be in. I think that's the number one thing. And then we can get to the issues of other ways that we can make it profitable. Then we will look at markets, we need good markets for that. We need technology because technology is efficiency. And all of a sudden, technology also makes youths more comfortable. It makes the job easier. All of a sudden, agricultural farming is not as dirty anymore. It's not as labor intensive anymore. It becomes more efficient and things like that. When you look at the financing muscle, but then also, the exposure and the processing for most countries, especially Malawi, was still very much stuck at producing and selling raw materials. But I think we need to develop the processing industry. And I think that's a place where most youth can actually get into, immediately. So yeah, so I have always said for me, the key thing of making the agriculture sector more attractive to the youth is to make sure it is profitable and the youth can actually see the financial gains of being into agriculture. At least for me, that is what attracted me into the industry. I saw the potential there, as far as economics and finance is concerned.
Okay, thank you. But I also think that we also need more success story of the people that went to the sector and they've succeeded to make a good lifestyle. So a lot of success story is also needed. We have a question from Christabel. Christabel is saying that great to hear from the youth in agriculture. Have the perception of the youth changed with regard to participation in agriculture? I think you have touched on that point. So let's just move to the second question. Has linking with bigger farmers been easy with regards to mentorship?
Yes, but then also no. I mean, not everyone is going to be helpful. So I think, to be fair, I have had, bigger people that have pulled me and really helped me a lot. And then I have had some who have closed me out and tried to pull me down and shove me to the side. But for sure, there are a lot of people that have made it. I think you asked a question about role models in the agriculture sector. Mine are also local. These are people that are reachable to me and have been able to help me a lot, opening up opportunities for me, for one. So they've been able to let me sell to them when nobody else would have. They understood my business and that, we are small, and still gave me the opportunity. They have connected me to other opportunities. They've given me a chance to go learn from them. They've pulled me. So I have had those. And I think it is very possible. And I couldn't have been here if it wasn't for a number of people, I think, that I can count, and I know them. So for sure, that has been helpful. They have connected me and linked me and given me the opportunities. For sure, it's very helpful.
Okay, and then there is a follow-up question from Christabel as well. She said, are you comfortably able to access market from your produce, or is it easier if you are working with more established farmers?
I think at the moment, because as I said before, I did development studies. I have a master's in development studies, and I have always worked in development. So I do have an interest in development of disadvantaged groups. So for me, it's not just about making money or doing business, but it's for making sure that my business can also benefit other people. Right. So reason why I work with smallholder farmers, to give them an opportunity for them to do business and also make money, therefore develop, themselves. So I look at the smallholders and the youth, and that's for that reason. And to tell you the truth, it's not very easy. I think the first year we didn't do very well. What I have noted was that there was a lot of mistrust. They didn't really trust it. I mean, I was new to them, so they didn't really trust me. So we had quite a bit of defaults. And then the second year, even though I made a loss, I went back because I understood that they were trying to study to see whether I was going to live up to our agreements. And I think I had shown them the first year that I will. The second year, I got an improvement, probably like 150% improvement. And I think that it is going to get better. So if you're looking at it from a business point of view, just pure business and making money, then it is better to just work with the commercial farmers. But if you're looking at it at that, you also have another cause. The smallholder farmers, it's not an immediate thing, but they do deliver. So I think what they need is time and the patience and the support. It's not going to be an immediate success. I think it takes time. So I have noted that at least 3 years of working with them, by the third year, they do start to deliver. So there's a lot of potential there, because I think for the first time this year, we were able to break even. And I'm thinking next year, it's even going to be better. So for sure, it's much easier to go with the commercial farmers if I just want to make money, but that's not what I just want to do. I also want to make a difference, which is why I still stick to the disadvantaged groups.
Thank you so much, Lily. I think we are at the end of our conversation. We thank you and Ekemini for your great insights. Do you have any concluding remarks of maybe a question we didn't specifically tackle during this conversation that you would like for the people to take with them as a takeaway from this conversation?
No, also just, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this discussion. And that it's also good to know that there is something that I can contribute, something I can say, that's important. So it's good to know that your work is being noticed, and that perhaps we are making a difference and that people have an interest, in what the youths are doing in agriculture. And I think that we have pretty much touched everything, but what I would like and what I hope is that we're going to start seeing deliberate programs, not only from government, but then also other sectors for the youth in agriculture. I hope that we will not see, some differences in the industry, because we do talk and we have spoken, but not much changes. So I hope that in future we will start, not in the far future, but in the near future, we will start to note some differences.
Thank you so much. Thank you also to the people in the audience. We are really glad that you have heard the voice of the young people in the agriculture sector. And this webinar was meant to consider the challenges specifically that the youth are confronting in the agriculture sector in the Southern African region due to COVID-19 pandemic, and which key policy intervention was required for the SADC to address those challenges. And from our conversation, I have noted that government needs to have preferential procurement for young people. There needs to be deliberate. They need to include young people in the policy making. And also, there were also be open for new learning. So also to make into consideration affordability of equipment in order for young people to have access to them. So these are the steps that our government or the SADC as a region can implement to allow the young people in the agriculture sector to grow, and also to allow us to make sure that there is a sustainability with the food security in the region. Thank you so much for you people who have joined this conversation. Thank you for the Southern African Trust that have initiated this talk. Please keep posted with the SADC social media platform for the next session. We thank you. Bye-bye.